That would be me.
Look who we're hanging with.
Jason David Frank.
Boom shakalaka.
Please do not change channel.
Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome back to the Hanging with Web show. I'm GW Pomichter, and we are at Authors in a Box in the Indian River Mall in Vero, Florida. And we're hanging right now with author Jill Wallace, the author of War Serenade. Jill, thanks for hanging with us today.
Wonderful to see you.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, wow. What a great day.
I know. And it's so hot. And it's December.
It's true. It's true. Welcome to sunny Florida.
I know. Thank goodness.
I detect a slight accent. Where are you from?
It's actually, I'm from the very deep south, South Africa.
That's pretty deep south. On a globe, that's like
That's
way
low
south.
as you can
That's
go.
way south.
It is.
You know, therein lies the difficulty. It's so south that for us it's north, because we're like equatorial Earth, which means that it's always warm.
Exactly.
We had winter. It lasted about 48 hours.
I was here just for a minute, I think. Yeah.
Yes, it lasted about 48 hours. We started complaining.
Right, and then
it went away.
It was gone.
That's right. But South Africa, that's far enough away from the equator, so you actually have.
Actually, it's not that far from the equator. Where I was born isn't far. I was born in Zambia, which used to be northern Rhodesia, and my parents were South African, so we moved south.
Okay.
But our country is the size of Texas. The whole of the Republic of South Africa is the size of Texas. So and we have from Mediterranean type climates all the way to tropical climates on each coast, and then very cool, very interesting, very a myriad of differences.
You know, we always think of our globe, and we position things a little bit off a little bit. And I don't think a lot of people realize that if your globe isn't made in the last decade, it's probably not right.
Really?
As a matter of fact,
because of the tilt?
Well, no. The Europeans, when they colonized America, we were the biggest deal as we grew.
Yes.
And so most map makers and globe manufacturers tended to make the United States a little larger, and what was considered the third world, which Africa, and
so we shrunk.
And they literally shrunk it down. And so if you were to look at Africa on an older globe, it would look like the same size as the U.S., whereas Africa as a continent is actually 4 times the size of the U.S.
That's so true.
But we just started to correct that recently. There was a big push in Washington, D.C.
You know what? That's news to me.
Isn't that neat?
I love
That's pretty neat stuff. So either South Africa's getting bigger, or we're just starting to realize that it's already pretty big. All right, so she's wrote me a note card that I have no idea, but you know what we're going to do first? Let's talk about War Serenade.
With pleasure.
All right, tell us about War Serenade.
This book was actually born in my mother's womb. My parents knew a couple who they met before I was conceived in their boarding house. They were a newly married couple. He was an opera singer and prisoner of war held by the Allies. South Africa was a colonial, we were one of the colonies, so they shipped a lot of the northern, when the prisoner of war camps became too full, they shipped a whole batch over to South Africa because it was a colony and they could leave them over there and forget about them. And my uncle Greg was an opera singer and of note in Italy, and he was sent to war and captured and sent to Pietermaritzburg, which is one of our cities, and in real life it was actually quite a happy time. It was a very nice prisoner of war camp. They did Italian things. They cooked Italian food. It was a wonderful story.
We want to remind everybody out there, guys, that we distinguish ourselves in World War II. There were two types of prison camps. There were prisoner of war camps, and these were soldiers looking after prisoner soldiers.
Right.
And then there were the concentration camps,
right,
which were very unpleasant.
Very true.
But soldiers tended to look out for other soldiers.
That is so true. That is honestly, that's a very profound thing to say and a very true thing to say. So yeah, it was much more like that. And my Uncle Greg performed, and my Auntie May was in the third row, and literally they saw each other and they were in love. And he stole out of the camp to visit her, and for 2 years they had this illicit love affair. And my mother used to tell me the story, and it was, I mean, who needs Beauty and the Beast when you got Auntie May and Uncle Greg? And what happened was, so I feasted on their story for so many years.
Wow.
My mother had bangles. So that's why I wear bangles, because it makes me happy. It always just a calming thing for me. So I'd hear this and I'd hear the story in my head, and I always saw it as a movie. So we moved to Florida, and I thought it's time. I have to tell this story. So I wrote it as a 60-page essay, and I marketed it just telephonically to some literary agents. And there was one in Bradenton. She was wonderful, and she said, "You need to tell this story, so keep going." And I did. This was 18 years ago.
Wow.
But I wanted to see it as a movie, so I wrote a screenplay. And I took it to Hollywood, and I pitched it to many producers, and it was optioned. And the guy, actually it wasn't optioned at the time, he read my screenplay and he said, "Now," he said, "I love the story, but it needs conflict. It needs conflict." And I thought, "But it's a happy story. It was a happy time, and they had a lovely romance." And he said, "Doesn't sell movies. I need conflict." And for a year I resisted, because I didn't want to mess up this beautiful story. And then I thought, well, that's pretty dumb. But it took me a whole year to realize I was being pretty dumb. So
we're artists. We have what in academia they refer to as pride of authorship.
Oh, indeed.
And we do have it a great deal. And trying to convince us that we're wrong, well, just don't try.
Yeah.
It's a long process. We're probably not as wrong as you think we are.
Right. But we're probably wronger.
But we're probably, yes, that's true. So after a year, you decided you'd go back?
So I rewrote it, but then I fictionalized it. I took out their names and I christened them something else, and it was absolutely liberating, because then my characters spoke to me, and I'd never experienced that before in a script. And I remember the call, he phoned me up and he said, "Now we have a movie." And I was so excited. So,
which are, by the way, those are words that every author ever wants to hear.
Exactly, and it was, I couldn't believe how lucky I was. And he commissioned a director, and he went to the American Film Institute, where they have their big hoopla in November in LA, and he called me up and said, "I have 3 money men who are interested." And I didn't hear from him for a month. And I thought that was a little odd, but it was Christmas and it was Hanukkah, and he was doing it. And I got a call from the director who he'd commissioned the day after Christmas, and she said, "Alan has died. He died of a heart attack unexpectedly, and he was a one-man show." So poor Alan passed, and my dream to make a movie passed with him. And sorry.
No.
It was very sad for all of us.
That is very sad. Now,
and
I have to do something very quickly, okay?
Yes.
There are 10,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel.
Yes.
I want to speak to one of them.
Yes.
James Pomichter, Arcane Pacific Entertainment. I know an author with a World War II love story that would love to see this on the big screen. I just watched Hollywood Girl. I loved it. It was a 1930s era period piece about the Peg Entwistle, who jumped off the Hollywood sign in the 1930s.
Oh, how wonderful.
I have shared Love, Lust, and a Room Key with everyone, and yes, I am one of those people who sat through SS Doom Trooper, which means that this lovely young author gets a movie, please. Thank you.
Thank you,
That is my
James.
brother James, who is a
James-
movie maker in LA, and so we want him to know about your story.
Oh, fantastic. That is so cool.
After you do Lucky, which is my book.
Oh, it is. And what is your book about?
It's a crime noir. It's a crime noir story.
Noir.
And
so you sure we
after
don't
Lucky.
get Tarantino? You don't want Tarantino for the
Oh
job?
no, I did. My first book was actually written as a screenplay first.
Really?
It was written for my brother. He sent a single scene synopsis that was his fiance at the time, now his wife, had done in college. And he said, I want to do a short film. I would love for you to write, to flesh this out. I need it to be, 10 to 15 minutes. And so I wrote a scene before the scene he sent me and a scene after, and I changed the middle scene a little bit, and I sent it back to him. And I was so enthralled by the story that was being created in my head that I said to him, do you mind if I write everything this way and that way, if I do it all? And he said, no, go ahead, knock yourself out. And I don't think he thought I was ever going to do it. And about 75 pages later, he found himself editing constantly because I kept sending him more pages. And so he got to a point where he said, I think we're done, let me do what I can do. And it got put aside for a while he was working, and I said, well, do you mind if I want to novelize that? I think it would be a great story. And so I novelized it, and now it's out in novel form in the world, and we're waiting for him to have time to actually make the screenplay.
Yay.
But he is an independent filmmaker. We're very excited about him again. His latest film, Hollywood Girl, The Peg Entwistle Story, is an award-winning film, and it's currently available on Amazon Prime. So enjoy.
Yay, we have Amazon Prime. I will
Absolutely.
Look for it.
And check out Jill Wallace, James. James will never read that entire book. So Veronica, you read the book and tell James what it says.
Please, Veronica.
Because my brother reads books that are this big.
Oh, yeah.
And he admits it. Openly, which is good.
It's all good.
So you've been making the rounds now, and you've been signing
actually,
and talking to readers
I
and
have,
stuff.
but this is it just hit shelves this year.
This year, okay.
Yeah, because my friend convinced me to write a book. And as you know, the transition from screenplay
very difficult
to book is, and this is a tome, this is 462 pages. So I really got carried away, but it was fabulous, and I learned this new craft, and I love it. So it's
wonderful.
Awesome.
Welcome to the artist community.
Thank
it is
you.
a wonderful
Thank
place
you
to
so
live.
much.
We're poor, but we're a big family, and we love it. So where will you be heading? Will you be doing more signings, more events? What's coming up for you?
I probably will do. Actually, I'm working on my next novel, also set in South Africa. It's a story of friendship, and it'll be called Zebra.
Zebra.
Which is zebra said with the South African flair.
I like that.
Zebra.
Outstanding.
And so I'm going to concentrate on that, but this is on Amazon and in Kindle and
we
hard
are going to
copy.
drop links down below so that you can find Jill Wallace and War Serenade on Amazon and every online bookstore. Go to all the online bookstores, buy all the copies of War Serenade. It'll be a bestseller by the time you're done. That one right there. That guy right there is going to buy them all.
Thanks.
And pass them out.
I look forward to
Guys,
sending
as
it to
we
you.
wrap it up, we are going to say thank you to our partners and our friends at Pound the Grape in Melbourne, Florida, the great author Yvonne Mason at Off the Chain Radio at Blog Talk Radio, our good friend Rick Shea at Famous Faces and Funnies, Jake Estrada over at Space Coast Comics, our good friend F. Kenneth Taylor at Something Unique Magazine. These are the people who share our videos all over the World Wide Web. We certainly hope you will too. Remember, everybody, subscribe, log on, tune in, and see who we're hanging with next.
Thank you so much.
That was
delightful.
awesome.